Professor, first off, how do you use Bitcoin as a tax haven?
Well, Bitcoin has all the necessary qualification for a tax haven. The jurisdiction where it is found does not impose taxes because it's cyberspace, right? No one imposes taxes in cyberspace. And second, it maintains the anonymity of taxpayers. So you can basically use Bitcoin to hide your profits from the IRS if you choose to do so. And this is how you evade taxes using Bitcoins.
So wait, so hang on. So anybody who has a Bitcoin right now is not paying taxes on their profits?
No, I think most people prefer to comply with tax rules, or at least I hope so. But if you choose not to do so, currently there is little that the IRS can do in order to come after you.
So is the IRS doing anything about it, or are regulators doing anything about it?
Well, I think the IRS is looking into it. So the IRS recently issued guidance and made it clear that Bitcoin is subject to regular reporting requirements like any other dealing, any other transaction. Whether taxpayers choose to comply with that is left to be seen. I suspect that most taxpayers will choose to comply, but I think it's a great weapon in the hands of tax evaders.
Right. Anyone who wants to hide out, clearly, because it's such a nascent market right now. Okay, so but if you own Bitcoin, do you even know how to have it taxed? Are there accountants who even know how to calculate the taxes on this?
As I mentioned, the IRS recently released guidance that explained how current tax law apply to Bitcoins, and I think that the guidance addressed most of the issues. For example, the guidance mentions that Bitcoin is treated as property rather than currency, which means every time you dispose of it, you have to account for gains and losses as a result of change in exchange rate since the time you first purchased the Bitcoin you disposed of. So yes, the rules are there. There are some issues that are left unresolved, but I think that if taxpayers want to comply with tax rules, even if they use Bitcoins, they can do so. It's burdensome, but it's possible.
What's the biggest issue that's not resolved yet?
What to do with taxpayers that choose not to comply, I think. I think the interesting thing about Bitcoin is it is better, I think, than an offshore bank account. Because what governments recently have started to do in order to fight offshore tax evasion is to shine lights on bank accounts by regulating the banks rather than the jurisdiction or the taxpayers. In the Bitcoin world, there are no banks. It's a peer-to-peer exchange system, so it can work without banks. So basically, the withholding and reporting agents, the banks, are taken out of the picture. This is why it is better to a certain extent than banks.
Professor, we of course hope that most people would in fact volunteer and pay their taxes, but do you know, are there any numbers or guesses out there as to who may be evading taxes by using Bitcoin?
Not yet, and frankly right now it's not a huge issue, I must admit. This is because the estimated loss to the Treasury every year from offshore tax evasion is between 40 and 70 billion. The entire Bitcoin economy is a few $1 billion, so it's hardly a major financial revenue issue as of now, but it might become a major issue as Bitcoin becomes more widely adopted.
Well, and here's the issue on that, though, Professor. You have said before that if most people decide, let's just say most people decide not to pay taxes on Bitcoin, that could actually undermine the credibility of the currency?
That's correct, I think, because in order to become a widely adopted payment system, it needs to have some legitimacy. And I think that people that are enthusiastic about Bitcoin should actually embrace some regulation, not a whole lot of regulation, but some minimal regulation in order to make it legit, in order to make it easily used for people that choose to comply with the law. If it's just about anonymity, I don't think it's going to be widely adopted because as a user of Bitcoin, I want to make sure that someone enforces the other party obligations in Bitcoins too.
That there's transparency. Professor, thank you so much.